Players Championship between Gerard Fabiano and Brad Nelson. See who's able to win what should be a very, very interesting match between these two players. Our last match of 2014, man.
Yeah, cannot believe it.
Not entirely sure where the year went. And away we go. It's a forest here for Fabiano. Nelson will draw. See how Brad wants to start things off here. Gerard, very simple with a basic land. Nelson could have a opulent palace, perhaps a temple.
And even that is a giveaway of some information. The Sultai Reanimator deck plays so many lands that come into play tapped that have some amount of value, that if Gerard's leading with a forest, it might mean his hand is very mana light.
Well, it's a basic land there for Nelson. It's a swamp, and out here is a Thoughtseize. So Brad's going to get his eyes on Gerard's hand and see exactly what he's working with. You'll see a Hero's Downfall, a Satyr Wayfinder, Island of Blossoms, a Doomwake Giant, and a couple of lands there, Nykthos and Llanowar Wastes.
A pretty slow hand, and Eidolon of Blossoms sticks out as the most powerful card here. It's very rare for someone to want to do something like take a Hero's Downfall and try to get aggressive. Brad has access to Sidisi, which is a card that can win the game on its own. But often it's about taking the cards with the most raw power, not necessarily trying to set up your curve.
Well, given what we watched in Brad's last match against Reed Duke, Eidolon of Blossoms is a card he needs to be quite wary of. It can really snowball into a huge advantage, though Hero's Downfall is an interesting option as well. You mentioned Sidisi and exactly how powerful that card can be in this matchup for Brad. It is definitely responsible for his game wins against Reed, but he'll go ahead and take the Eidolon and move forward over to Fabiano.
Even if Eidolon of Blossoms versus Hero's Downfall is close, given whatever's going on in Brad's hand, the fact that there's no guarantee Gerard can even cast his Hero's Downfall on time means I think Eidolon of Blossoms is the card to take.
4 cards off the top for the Wayfinder, but none of them a land. A Whip of Erebos, a Sultai Charm, a Farika, and another copy of Eidolon Blossoms. Those cards are all quite good. Now they're all in the graveyard. Can Fabiano find some lands here?
We know he still has Nykthos left over in hand, but not an auspicious start here, missing with the Wayfinder.
He's coming in for 1. There's the Nykthos and a passing of the turn. Looks like Nelson blocked very, very quickly. Perhaps it's time for a Courser. It is. Top card, Evolving Wilds, trigger, gain a life. Nelson up to 19. Take a look at a copy of Satyr Wayfinder.
And already Gerard in a lot of trouble. Game 1's just a lot about generating a card advantage and playing to the board, eventually setting up Whip of Erebos, and Brad off to a very good start on that axis.
See if anything else doing here for Nelson. Looking through a couple of cards. Again, the Wilds he can sacrifice if he'd like to. He's sitting at 19 life. Unlike a fetch land, Evolving Wilds, when you sacrifice and get a land, actually gains you a life. What a deal.
What a deal. And nothing to do with the mana anyway.
Yeah.
What's not to like?
Here's Murderous Cut, going to go after the Courser. So Gerard going to remove a Sultai Charm and a Whip of Erebos. He's down to 19. Tie game right now.
Well, sort of. Brad's already accumulating a pretty substantial advantage in resources. Gerard's hand, nowhere to really go, even if he draws reasonably well for the next couple turns. And Brad with a hand right now that appears very well suited for an attrition fight.
Looks like Brad's going to sacrifice the Evolving Wilds here. Doesn't look like he has much interest in drawing Satyr Wayfinder next turn, though he's going to give it some thought. It is the finals after all, don't want to make a mistake, but Satyr Wayfinder is going to go away, basic land going to come into play, and he'll push his life total up to 20 here in just a moment.
So you may be wondering, why did it take Brad so long to make that decision? And part of it is he has to weigh whether or not gaining 1 life is worth giving Gerard information on what the next draw step is. It's a very subtle thing.
Now, of course, it's nice for Brad to know. Might be worse for the opponent to know, depending on what it is. Either way, we're going to see it. It's just a swamp, not a big deal. There goes the Courser. And now we go back Fabiano's way. Fabiano quickly untapping his 4 permanents and take a draw. In for 1 he comes. Nelson back down to 19. Does Gerard have a 4th land?
Once again tied.
The answer, as far as the land is concerned, is no. And yes, it is tied. Temple of Malady. Take a look at the top card. It will stay on top. And now here's a nice window for Nelson to take a turn off and get Whip of Erebos into play.
not a lot of answers for this card. Game 1 for Gerard, just a couple copies of Sultai Charm, which he can't even currently cast.
A force and a passing of the turn by Fabiano. Some real mana issues here, not doing all that much. Nelson will draw a card. There is a land. This is a copy of Soul of Innistrad. The big guy comes into play. It's got a lot of text. Fabiano wants to take a look.
And even with the start as subtle as Basic Forest, there was some indicator that there was something wrong with Gerard's hand. No value lands, likely to be color mana issues, likely to be missing land drops, and all of those things have come back in this game already.
Here's a copy of Sylvan Caryatid. A little bit of mana fixing, perhaps, as we're going to go back Nelson's way. Nelson prepared to draw. Gerard wants to make sure he knows exactly what the soul does. Powerful card in these kind of grindy matchups.
Yeah, it's very powerful in this deck because it's something that you don't mind flipping over to a mill effect. It can be very potent there, and once it's in play, it's a little bit slow, but a 6/6 Dust Toucher is still going to do plenty of work even if you're not using the activated power very much.
And it comes. Taking a huge chunk out of Fabiano's life. Here's Satyr Wayfinder, turn over 4 cards. Brad will be taking a forest with him. The rest will go to the graveyard. That's Sidisi, an Opulent Palace, and a Hornet Queen. Land gonna come in.
And this is just about perfect for Brad because now he has the necessary mana left over to activate the Soul of Innistrad, get back some real power here in Sidisi, Hornet Queen, and Corsair Crewfix.
And what's really tough too is, if you're able to get a soul activation, and normally you'll see it from the graveyard, but when it's actually in play and still gets the opportunity to attack, that's pretty tough to beat.
The 1-for-1 exchanges don't mean too much in the matchup. Even if Gerard here has a piece of spot removal, it doesn't really matter. And the same thing is true of a lot of the threats in the matchup.
Gerard taking a long look at his hand. There's a Doomwake Giant. Looks like that's going to come down. He'll take a Satyr Wayfinder away from Nelson. But he doesn't really seem to mind.
Well, even that's of dubious value. The Wayfinder may be more damaging in the graveyard for Gerard than it is in play.
Just due to the whip that's out there. Brad trying to figure out what cards he wants to return. Hornet Queen, the Wayfinder, and the Course are going to leave Sidisi down in the bin. Untap and draw Will Nelson. Yavimaios is what he's picked up. Could play Hornet Queen this turn if he'd like. But he'll start by coming on in with the big soul.
I suspect Brad can find something more efficient to do with his turn than cast Hornet Queen because of the Doomwake Giant on Gerard's side. Maybe not a great use of mana. If he's able to kill the Doomwake Giant, that changes things, but I think as long as Doomwake's in play, Brad's going to want to spend his time and mana doing other stuff.
Well, there's Satyr Wayfinder, turn over a couple of cards. Thoughtseize, Murderous Cut, Courser. Those are the ones that are going to go to the graveyard. Yavimaios is going to go to the hand. So he's got a land to play, and he'll play the coast. And just pass the turn back. Perhaps ready to activate the soul again if necessary. But not interested in really doing too much right now. He is pretty far ahead in this game. Has all the cards, has all the options. And it's definitely got Gerard on the back foot.
Well, the level of efficiency between these decks right now just leagues apart. They have a lot of the same tools, of course, in the matchup, but Brad with more mana, more ways to flip over Carson's graveyard, Whip of Erebos, and Gerard just kind of casting removal spells and regular creatures.
Some mana here for Fabiano. He'll play Whip of Erebos, has to pay 1 to cast it, so he goes down to 6. See if Nelson does care about that at all. Both players with the whip now. However, Brad at 30, he's ahead in a lot of aspects this game. Nelson gonna go reaching for some mana. It's a Murderous Cut. So he'll be taking care of something. Get that Doomwake Giant off the table.
And Brad's hand's still completely stocked.
Yeah. And thanks to Soul of Innistrad, life is pretty good here. Sultai Charm going to get that off the table. Super efficient turn. And if Nelson has access to a Doomwake Giant here, the game could be over right away. Take a draw. Copy of Llanowar Waste.
I mean, Brad's got an embarrassment of riches at this point.
Yeah, at this point he really does. And that doesn't even take into account the things he can do with Whip of Erebos. It's not if he's going to win. It looks like it's just a matter of when and how he wants to go about doing it. You know, in situations like this, again, we saw this at the back end of Game 5 against Reed. Just wants to make sure he doesn't make a mistake. A situation like this where you're playing for so much money, you do not want to make an error. Here's a whip activation. Here comes Sidisi. Trigger. No creature there, so no zombie. Everybody's coming into the red zone. Trigger Sidisi again. There is a creature that time, 2 of them in fact. But only 1 zombie going to come in here for Nelson. Fabiano will have to do some blocking, so he will chump block, of course. This will finish. Gerard 4 damage is going to come across. Gerard's going to go down to 2.
Gerard's hand just forced on that block. Any other block leaves him dead.
And does Brad have a follow-up? Looks like he does have a Farika available. Could also cast Courser, but he'll go with the God of Affliction, play Yavimaya Coast, and pass the turn back.
Farika here just, in case there's any weird graveyard shenanigans going on Gerard's side of the table, he gets to cut that off.
Doomwing Giant to draw here for Fabiano. Looks like it's too little too late. Brad Nelson up a game here in the finals against Gerard Fabiano. Sultai Reanimator Mirror Game 1 goes to the former Player of the Year. As we do turn our attentions to the sideboard here, it's going to be looking a lot like what we saw last round. We'll start with Fabiano actually. We'll start off with his Bio Blight, along with 2 Disdainful Strokes, a Hero's Downfall, 2 Negates, a Silence the Believers, a Sultai Charm, Cure the Crashing Wave, 2 Read the Bones, a Thoughtseize, a Treasure Cruise, and then his invitational card, as you like to put it, 2 Ashiok Nightmare Weaver.
So those all the sources of just broad strokes card advantage, those are going to come in. The 2 copies of Read the Bones, the Treasure Cruise. I think the additional Thoughtseize is valuable here as well. The Planeswalkers will come in. I think Sultai Charm will come in as well. Pretty flexible. Another answer to the enchantments in the deck. I think the 1 Bio Blight is nice here because Brad is playing with Sidisi and Hornet Queen. 2 copies of Disdainful Stroke, 2 copies of Negate. I think pretty close to the whole sideboard. I'm looking at 10, 11 cards that I like on Gerard's side.
I think a lot of nice options over there for Gerard, much like Reed, but Reed didn't have Ashiok where Gerard does, so I think an additional helper there for Fabiano. You see on Nelson's side, much like we saw last round, a Reclamation Sage, 3 Bio Blights, 3 Disdainful Strokes, 2 Heroes Downfall, 3 Ashioks there for Nelson, 2 Kiores, and a Drowning Sorrow.
So Bio Blight I like less for Brad than I do for Gerard, because Brad's playing with Sidisi, and Gerard really only has the Hornet Queen as an answer. He still may want a little bit more removal. I definitely like Reclamation Sage, the 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke, the 2 Heroes Downfalls, and the Planeswalkers. Again, heavy sideboarding on both sides of the table.
Things are definitely going to change now.
Yeah, the Planeswalkers make the game very different. Heroes Downfall is actually, I think, one of the weaker cards Game 1 because so many of the creatures generate value when they come into play. But post-board, when the game is defined so much by Planeswalkers, Heroes Downfall gets a lot better.
Players going to shuffle up here for game number 2. Once they're finished sideboarding, we'll be watching that match, but we'll talk about one of the things that we did unveil this weekend, which is the State Championships, a program that was so successful. We're able to bring it back for you, not 1, but 2 playmats.
Exactly. Pro Tour weekend. Our state championships will be occurring. Saturday, April 11th will be standard, and Sunday, April 12th will be modern. These are 2 separate events. The playmats you see, those are available for players who finish in the top 8 of their event.
That's awesome. They make one big picture.
Yep. You can slap them together, and you can see the humans going to war with the goblins.
Well, I think we know who wins that one, though I am curious about what's happening in the top with that rather angry elephant.
Yeah, it looks like something's about to get crushed underfoot. StarCityGames.com/states for more information.
Game number 2 here of the finals between Fabiano and Nelson. A pretty easy game there for Nelson due to Fabiano's mana troubles. We'll see if he can bounce back here. This is how Brad started off things in the last match, was up a game over Reed Duke. But again, Reed had a great sideboard for the matchup, and I think Gerard does too. I really, really like his options.
Gerard just never got out of first gear Game 1. Until the deck is milling its graveyard over and doing things with Whip of Erebos, it doesn't really do very much. Brad had everything humming. Gerard really just had some creatures and some removal spells. And the player with Whip of Erebos and ways to stock the graveyard is going to outclass the person who does not 99 times out of 100.
This is Gerard giving things a rather long look. Someone who you've known for just a very, very long time. He's been The guy's about to play in his 50th Pro Tour. It's crazy to even think about.
Level 50 Planeswalker, most of anyone in the United States, I believe. 50th Pro Tour, 3 Grand Prix wins, a recent runner-up, I say recent, a couple of years ago at Grand Prix Charlotte as well. A Pro Tour top 8 to his name.
He's been playing forever. Most players, now we've talked about the short breaks that we've taken. I think you've taken 2. I've taken 1, and I don't think Gerard's taken any.
No, I can't recall a time where Gerard was not very active.
He is coming to every tournament. He loves to game, a teacher as well, and it's been a heck of a run for him. We're going to see if he can make it back into this match. For Brad, I think everybody knows about him, former player of the year. A lot of accomplishments to his name, and just such a great standard player.
Yep. He's built so many influential decks. He's a great metagamer, and he's not afraid to discard things. He's had decks where he's been very successful, winning a Grand Prix, winning an Open, winning an Invitational, and you see him 7 days later playing in a tournament with a completely different deck. He's very sensitive to where the metagame's at, and in a field this small, where you have a good idea what people are playing, that's an incredible skill to have. I actually think for game 1, Brad is probably favored. I think for the sideboard of games, Gerard, I don't want to say heavily favored, because that's probably incorrect, but I do think that he is. I do think he is quite favored. I like his matchup too. I think the players still have enough of the same tools that I wouldn't say either player is a heavy favorite, but I would definitely rather have Gerard's 60 than Brad's.
Players wondering at home, is there any split taking place between these players? First place is $20,000. Second is 8. No split. Came to battle. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Brad Nelson is not the type to split. And Gerard Fabiano often has so many splits that he can't split the finals. So same outcome, but for 2 very different reasons.
On Twitter, a lot of players are watching. You've got Jerry Thompson and Tom Ross rooting for Brad. You've got William Huey Jensen rooting for Gerard Fabiano. Everybody's picking their sides. Right now, Nelson is up 1 as there's a Temple Deceit for Gerard. Temple of Malady, the draw for Nelson. He also has an Opulent Palace lead off with if he'd like.
And even now, Brad having to stress out over his first land drop. And it's really the question of when does he want to scry? You want to wait until there's something that your hand's missing. So often you're better served early on in the game when you want either lands or spells, holding off on your scry lands.
Here's a Thoughtseize. Let's see what Nelson is up to. Reclamation Sage, couple copies of Courser. Farika as well. That one plays a pretty big role in things. The big soul that was helpful to win game number 1. The Opulent Palace, and you have Mycos. So a pretty good hand here for Nelson.
I suspect the target here is going to end up being Farika, although there's arguments for all the cards in the hand, and it depends a lot on what Gerard's got going on. Once there's a second Courser copy of Courser Crewfix, it's really hard to cut Brad off of that because the second one's not worth very much.
And there goes the God of Affliction. Nelson going to draw. Copy of Sultai Charm. There's Opulent Palace, and passing the turn. Fabiano. Does he have a third land? Yes, he does. It's a forest and just a passing of the turn. No Courser here.
And the mana problems again coming up for Gerard here. Unable to cast Ashiok if it's in his hand. Can't cast a Sultai Charm if it's in his hand.
Here's Courser, top card. Delta. Pass it back. Fabiano will draw. He needs to get something going here in the finals. Game 1 was very one-sided. Game 2, not great here for Gerard. There's Nurborg. There's Nidalon. Now that's a good start. He'll get the draw card. Nelson picks up a Delta. Opulent Palace is the top card. He's thinking about putting it into play. Maybe he wants to play another Courser first, but he doesn't. Trigger, gain a life. Now there's another Opulent Palace on top. Looks like that'll be his draw next turn. Reclamation Sage, that's going to come down. Take care of the Eidolon. In for 2 we go.
Really important for Brad to cut off that Eidolon before too much damage gets done. It's the defining feature of Gerard's deck in the matchup. It's the major point of distinction and something that can really allow Gerard to pull out of this early deficit.
It was absolutely huge for Reed in the games that he did win against Brad. And getting that thing off the table, I think, is incredibly important. Reclamation Sage has a lot of great targets in this matchup. Ilana Blossoms may be the best of the bunch. Gerard taking a look at what Brad does have in his hand as he did Thoughtseize a little bit earlier. Figure out how he can move forward. He'll start by playing Yavamaikos and just passing the turn back over to Nelson. Nelson will draw Opulent Palace. Take a look at the top card now. It's a copy of Llanowar Waste. See what land he wants to put into play, as he does have a couple of options here.
And saying go is a really bad sign for Gerard here, because all the powerful stuff his deck can do at this juncture is in his main phase. So it likely indicates a hand that's flush with removal or spells he can't really cast.
Here's an attack for 4. Looks like Fabiano's going to take the 4. See what the follow-up's going to be here for Nelson. Looks like he's going to go with the Courser. Play the Llanowar Waste, trigger twice, so it'll go up to 23. And we'll take a look at the top card. It's a copy of Seder Wayfinder, and I think that'll be it for Nelson's turn.
And that was a subtle bit of gamesmanship there by Brad. Normally the first order of business is put the land into play off of the Courser. Brad electing not to do that, hoping to bait Gerard into using a removal spell on the Courser, when Brad was intending on just playing the second copy main phase no matter what happened.
Sultai Charm, we're going to use a mode we don't see a ton of, which is draw 2, discard 1.
I believe that's Catalog.
Indeed. Hard to cast Catalog.
Ultimate Price, Naturalized, Catalog. I believe those are the 3 modes.
Look at you. Look at you. There's a Saga Common. A delight.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty positive.
So you don't tell anyone that. You're sure.
No, because if I'm wrong, then you know.
Yeah.
I always like to hedge.
Yeah, Twitter, all that stuff. I understand.
A little bit of humility never hurt anyone either, you know?
Because when I think of you, that's what I think of.
Oh, come on, man.
Here's a Lot of Blossoms. Trigger and a draw. There's a Temple. Little scry action. Top card going to stay on top. Gerard behind right now. He's got some catching up to do. Eidolon is a card that can help him do that. Brad going to draw a copy of Seder Wayfinder. Top card now is a Thoughtseize. That's a good one.
But you're just getting the feeling that it's not looking likely that Gerard's going to get in the next turn with the Eidolon in play. And even if he does, Brad's kind of just beating him down right now. Not something you see happen in the matchup a lot, but Gerard's draw was slow enough that the life total is starting to matter a lot.
And this is the way that I think he has to win this game. We saw this in the last match against Reed. You know, the games that Brad won, he got to be aggressive with Sidisi and, you know, keeping the opponent off balance with Reclamation Sage. And Reed was having some issues with mana. And I think that's the way he needs to go out winning the games, because when the games are even and Gerard or Reed have the option to say, read the bones, or cast a Treasure Cruise, or get Ashiok going, those are the games that Brad can't come back from. The longer it goes, the worse it is for Nelson. He can work his way into the mid game, but the late game, I don't think he wants to be there.
The one trump he has in that scenario is Soul of Innistrad. That's something with enough muscle to it where even if Gerard's deploying his more powerful stuff, Brad can keep up. But in a general sense, I agree. Brad needs to be the aggressor here.
Eidolon looks like it just wants to block. I mean, Gerard feels he needs to keep his life total high. He's a little bit worried. Going to jump in front of Reclamation Sage. Here's a copy of Murderous Cut. There's an Urborg in play, so able to cast that. Bye-bye Courser. Eidolon and the Reclamation Sage will trade. 2 damage will come across. Fabiano's down to 10.
But Brad is thrilled with all these kind of trades.
Courser has just done such a nice job for him this game. Reclamation Sage, too. Fabiano's trying to catch up on cards. There's Polluted Delta trigger, gain a little bit of life. Nelson up to 24. Here's the big guy.
Not only is there an issue with the card advantage, but there's also raw power, which is where you would expect Gerard to have an advantage. But Soul of Innistrad, one of Brad's best cards in that regard.
It was feeding time for Soul of Innistrad in game number 1. It might be again for game number 2.
And now Gerard kind of getting hit from 2 angles here. His life total matters, so he needs to be playing a reactive, removal-oriented game. But, you know, the card advantage engine that Brad has going now with Soul of Innistrad, even in the event that it dies, means that that's not really a palatable strategy either.
Yeah, killing the soul is, I mean, is something that probably needs to be done, but it's not great if you do. That's what makes the card so good.
It would be fine if Gerard was in a position to quickly close out the game, but it's Brad who's in that position.
Yeah. And it's Brad in this matchup who always needs to be in that position, I feel, to win. Just given how the last matchup went against Reed and how the games did play out. Again, Reed did have some man issues in the games, but Brad is able to, push his advantage with Sidisi and some other cards. This will be a copy of Soul Tide Charm. Again, the black mana assist thanks to Urborg. See what else Fabiano can do this turn. Here's 3 mana, Read the Bone. So he's going to go down to 8 and fix his draw a little bit. A little scry action here. This is like an okay turn to take off to do this.
Part of the problem is, Brad's drawing Thoughtseize next turn, plus has gas in his hand, and it's hard to imagine that Gerard has that many really relevant cards at this stage.
Yeah, when you're drawing a Thoughtseize, you may not care about Read the Bones all that much. See how Brad wants to start things off. It looks like with Opulent Palace, he'll play that trigger. In for 2. This is the easy part.
Keep in mind, Brad always has the option of sacrificing the Delta and looking at a new card, but he's happy to draw Hero's Downfall versus a random look.
A Treasure Cruise, a Murderous Cut, a Sylvan Caryatid, and a Negate are the options here for Fabiano.
And I like taking the Murderous Cut because 1-for-1 removal just doesn't matter very much with Soul of Innistrad in the graveyard, and Brad's going to go down the same path.
And he's going to take the Cruise. Negate. Murderous Cut still left over there. Just going to pass the turn back. Soul of Innistrad ready to bring some stuff back at a moment's notice. That's the big trump in the late game for Brad.
Definitely.
As you did mention. See what Gerard wants to play this go around.
It's funny, given the nature of the matchup, that among the one of the weaker cards is essentially 1 mana kill a creature. Because the game is about card advantage, and so many of the creatures generate value as they're coming to play.
Yeah, it's weird because it certainly has its moments.
Right.
Where it's good, and I feel like you probably have to leave it in, especially when you're playing someone that does have Sidisi, but it's not, an all-star. It's not a home run. Hero's Downfall to draw. Sylvan Caryatid on top.
Especially because these decks are also drawing, Thoughtseizes later on in the game. And a good way to get stranded with cards in your hand later on is having them be cards like Murderous Cut.
Bad going to sacrifice a Delta. Doesn't want anything to do with that copy of Sylvan Caryatid, so we'll get a swamp. Get a look at a fresh one. See if he finds something that he likes. Top card. I bet he likes that one. Negate or no in Fabiano's hand, which we know he has one. Could draw on a Disdainful Stroke, but Whip of Erebos is better than a lot of draws in Brad's deck right now.
Again, just another dimension of attack, even if it's not good immediately.
Perhaps it's time for some bees, as a Hornet Queen has been placed onto the stack here. A Disdainful Stroke says no. So that'll take care of that. We're heading back Fabiano's way.
But Gerard's still stuck with a hand with just 2 1-for-1s against Brad's stocked hand and card advantage engine and Corsair Crewfix.
Oh, it'll take some good top decks. That might be a start. There's a Kiora. Starts at 2. We'll see if the elevator goes up or down. It goes down. Don't forget, Nelson does have a copy of Hero's Downfall in hand. But the Crashing Wave has arrived. It has drawn a card and it'll pass the turn back. Caryatid there to defend it. Corsair is untapped, of course. Llanowar Waste on top. Whip of Erebos was the draw.
If you had to identify a way for Gerard to potentially get back into the game, it would be a protected Kiora. I think he's still so far down on resources that it's going to be really hard. But it is his best shot, even if it's a long shot.
Yeah. I mean, having any shot at all is almost feels like a victory.
Yeah.
Given the situation. That's all you can really hope for. Going to use Murderous Cut to get the Corsair out of here in the draw step. There's a backup Corsair. Land going to come into play. Sidisi on top of the deck. Nelson up to 24. What will Brad take the opportunity to slide in here, if anything? Fabiano's last card, I believe, in hand is Negate.
Farika is a pretty attractive way to go after a Planeswalker here, especially Kiora, where Brad kind of wants to flood the board with stuff. He doesn't want to be on one big threat. It also cuts off any sort of graveyard shenanigans Gerard might be up to. And given how stocked his hand is, he's really in a position to threaten getting into 7 Devotion and start to attack.
There is Farika. Again, able to use those pain lands to his advantage because of Urborg, so no damage dealt when casting the God of Affliction. Perhaps some enchantment snake tokens on the way. Kiora looks like it's going up. The question is, what does it want to target? Well, I imagine only one real good thing to target here in Courser. I think Gerard asking, can I target Farika given its current state? Looks like the answer is no, so he'll just go with Courser and simply pass the turn back.
Well, I think the problem may be that, it's not even clear to Gerard if he has a chance to protect Kiora long term, and he might be better off just cashing it in for a card and an extra land drop, but ultimately Gerard decides against. And Brad just with an embarrassment of riches right now. His hand's completely stocked.
Yeah, the question is just how do you sequence it? He's going to start with Hero's Downfall going after Kiora. Again, he knows his opponent has Negate in hand.
And this is a bad feeling if this is the test spell.
Mm-hmm. But you know about the Veribos, and you're also seeing Ashiok staring at you in the face. Embarrassment of riches is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gerard looking up at a man who has about 5 or 6 cards in hand and Ashiok on top.
And willing to open on Hero's Downfall your really only relevant permanent.
All right, Kiora's dead. You got me. What's next here for Nelson? He'll go with the whip. Do you want to negate this one? You do.
If nothing else, this represents, Devotion being up and running next turn. With Gerard at 6, I don't think he can risk that. And also, you can't take the negate with you to the next game. You got to cast it at some point. Whip Erebos looks as good as anything else Brad is going to produce.
It's a passing of the turn. We're going back Nelson's way. Ashiok the draw, Forest on top. Can, of course, put that into play with Courser if he'd like, and he will. Trigger going up to 25. Top card of the deck now is a copy of Thoughtseize. Not too bad. See how Nelson wants to continue to pace the game. He'll go with Sidisi now. Isn't going to take a point of damage to cast it. Man is looking pretty good over there. That's going to resolve. Take a look at a couple of cards. Thoughtseize, Polluted Delta, and a Yavimaya, so no zombie coming along with the Brood Tyrant. Sylvan Caryatid's the card on top of the deck. This is an Ashiok. That is resolving. Elevator's going up. Gerard's done this to so many people over the course of his career.
I mean, his career? Talk about the last 2 days.
Yeah. Now here's the Seder Wayfinder. Zombie gonna come in. Wayfinder to turn over a creature. Now there's Reclamation Sage. Just the deck, the ability to just work its way through it so quickly is what makes this such a great option for players. It's a green deck that just hums along.
Yep, you get access to a lot of card advantage. Some of it implied, some of it very straightforward, but the draw selection, the card drawing, of course, there are Crufix naturally, just a lot of ways to reap a lot of cards.
Silence the Believers now. With Strive, mind you. That's not so bad.
Again, not a long-term solution to what's going on at present, but it's probably another turn or two at least.
It's these kind of top decks that he's going to need to get back into it, you know?
And the problem is he's so light on these kind of top decks. He's only got the one copy of Silence of the Believers. It's unlikely Ashiok amounts to anything anymore. His one Cure is gone.
Let's see what this is going to be. Well, that's not great in Seder Wayfinder. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's not great. It's turning over some pretty good cards, though. Farika, Eidolon, Thoughtseize, those are all gone. Nykthos is going to be added to the hand. A card like Farika may be able to get him back into this one. Here's 2 mana. There's Caryatid. 3 mana. Hero's Downfall. Hey, he's fighting.
He's trying. Again, it seems so unlikely he can beat Brad's card of hand. Even the board itself is only at a neutral place right now. And Gerard with no cards in hand, and a lot of his most potent one-ofs, they're already gone.
Of course, you're going to put a Swamp into play, trigger, a little life gain, top card, Hero's Downfall. Corsair, of course, does such a great job to make sure that every actual draw step will be spells, not lands. Stopping you from flooding out. You see Brad's hand, Reclamation Sage, Sultai Charm, Red Zone, that's where he's headed. There are your blocks, 2 damage you're going to get through. Fabiano's down to 4. Any interest in maybe playing the Reclamation Sage at this point?
Well, the question is there any real enchantment he's worried about Gerard drawing? I think Brad also has a second copy of Reclamation Sage.
Got no copies now, putting them both into play.
I mean, this seems a little bit aggressive because now Doomweight Giant is,
Good.
it's a real draw.
Gerard's got something to cast. No, he doesn't. That's going to do it. Brad Nelson going to win game number 2 here over Gerard Fabiano. Solitaire Reanimator Mirror in favor of Nelson at this point. He's 1 game away from $20,000.
Keep in mind, though, Gerard, he was in the spot just last round, down 2-0 to Brian Bronduin. Made some pretty radical alterations to his sideboard to take 3 games in a row. I'm not sure if this matchup, because the tools are so similar, if there's really room for that kind of repositioning. But Gerard has had his back to the wall multiple times this tournament, as has Brad, everyone.
Do you think anything changes for either of these players, maybe on play draw or given what they've seen from each other? They've both got a lot of options.
To me, all the cards that are good seem like they're good no matter what. I don't if Gerard or Brad is changing much of what's in their sideboard, I think it's more about what cards they saw out of the opposing deck rather than whether or not they're on the play or on the draw. It feels pretty straightforward to be here what they want. They want their Planeswalkers, ways to answer Planeswalkers, their own big trumps, and ways to answer each other's trumps. So Planeswalkers, Heroes Downfalls, Disdainful Strokes, card drawing spells. I don't think there's that much room for maneuvering like that.
Yeah, I don't think so. The options are so good. I don't know how much either player wants to maneuver or change things up after sideboard. So we'll see. Again, I like both players' options. I like Gerard's more than Brad's, but, Brad has taken an aggressive slant to the match, and I think he has to.
He has to. Setting aside the Soul of Innistrad, which is something that Gerard doesn't have that gives Brad a lot of substance, and it's come up both games so far. I think Gerard's got a better game when it goes late. That seemed to be the defining feature of the match that Brad played against Reed. I still think the same thing is true here, even though Gerard is down 2-0, and both games were pretty lengthy.
Well, both players going to maybe change things up a little bit and get ready for game number 3. But if you weren't with us earlier during this tournament, you didn't find out about the Mammoth token. We're getting pretty close to a hippo, but all things being honest, pretty adorable.
We are getting close, which is a starting point. This is the January kit. Star City Games Game Night is a program that we offer for stores. You can run these tournaments the same day every week, sanctioned, unsanctioned, whatever format the store wants to. Just get players to your store for fun and friendly magic. This is the January kit. If you're looking to get signed up for February, head over to starcitygames.com/game night for more information or contact your Star City Games organized play representative.
You may be thinking, what is a Mammoth token good for? But that's not, who cares?
It doesn't even matter.
I use that for anything.
Right.
I have Call of the Herds I need to cast.
Yes.
As though this were, when was Call of the Herd? 2000, I think?
2001, because it was the most recent set that was legal for the first Pro Tour I played in.
Now, most people won't believe me, but Call of the Herd, and most of you are probably Googling that card, that was $20.
It was $20 at the time that cards were not worth $20. In addition, it came in second place at that Pro Tour.
Oh, really?
Tommy Wallamies.
Dumbo Drop?
Dumbo Drop.
Boom. What came in first?
Kai Bude with Illusions Donate.
Lucky.
Yeah, no, seriously.
So lucky.
Just another lucky tournament for Kai.
So wait. Dumbo Drop had Call of the Herd, and Kai was playing Illusions Donate?
Yep.
One of those decks seems a lot better than the other.
I think the match was pretty close in the finals, if I recall correctly.
Okay, all right. I'm willing to be wrong. That's before my time.
There's a lot of counter spells in Tommy's deck.
Okay.
Intuition for Call of the Herd that's a lot of elephants.
Busted.
You got to win like 2 Star City game nights to have enough tokens for Intuition for Call of the Herd.
That is so many elephants.
I know, it's insane, right?
Game number 3 underway here between Fabiano and Nelson.
I was busy capitalizing on the synergy between Spectral Lynx and Pernicious Deed en route to not making the second day.
Very nice, very nice. Well, that sounds like good deck building.
Yeah, it's just, it regenerates, so it's basically free.
Here's the Thoughtseize. Take a look at Nelson's hand. Doomweight Giant, Farika, Sidisi. What else is hiding over there? He's got Thoughtseize too. Kiora as well. Temple and Opulent Palace. So color's not an issue. Land's not really an issue, though you imagine he's looking for a 4th and 5th one here sooner rather than later.
So this is a pretty powerful hand for Brad. It's got a path. The risk here, nothing in the way of removal spells, which means that if Gerard has Corsair Crufix and especially Eidolon of Blossoms, might just go unchecked. We'll see. There's definitely a path here for Gerard, and I think taking the Thoughtseize, leaving Brad with a hand with no removal indicates Gerard's got some powerful creatures he wants to have him play for a little while.
Yeah, it's very telling on what Gerard's got going on. If he's taking the discard spell, doesn't want Brad to know what's going on. He's going to play Windswept Heath and just pass the turn back over to Nelson. Nelson will draw a card. It's a Forest. So that's land number 4. See if he wants to play Opulent Palace this turn or a Temple. He's going to go with the Temple. Take a look at the top card. Consult the grip here. And we will see if it will become the bottom card.
I like playing the Scryline here. It's pretty well defined what Brad's looking for, either a 3-drop or a piece of removal.
He's giving this one a long look. It's staying on top. We're going back.
The Scry is so hard because Gerard taking Thoughtseize with his Thoughtseize could just mean a million different things.
Yeah. Also, scrying is just pretty tough.
Yeah, it's just pretty tough in general. I suspect that the Thoughtseize taking Thoughtseize means it's either Eidolon of Blossoms or Corsair Crufix.
Sylvan Caryatid is coming into play. Does Fabiano not have a 3rd land? Oh, my goodness.
That would also explain the Thoughtseize taking Thoughtseize.
Yeah. The follow-up here for Nelson. It's a Farika. Pass the turn back. Fabiano needs to draw lands. That doesn't look to be one of them.
Could potentially still be a turn where he casts Corsair Crufix.
Yep. Does have a Thoughtseize in his hand. He's taking a look at Nelson's grip over there, seeing if he should cast the Thoughtseize or not.
No 2 ways about it. Gerard's just caught the bad end of some draws here.
Absolutely. He'll go with the discard spell. There's the hand. Kiora, Sidisi, Doomweight Giant, Opulent Palace, and Llanowar Waste. He's scared of that one. That one's got to go.
Now, all is not doom and gloom for Gerard here. Most likely Brad's turn next turn is going to be Sidisi. If Gerard has Disdainful Stroke, that leaves Brad with a hand of just a Doomweight Giant, easily beatable if Gerard has a piece of removal, and then his hand is loaded with spells. So this is not the end of the world.
And if Gerard has Murderous Cut too, he's okay. He's got 2 mana available in Caryatid and Forest and 3 cards in the graveyard.
Yeah.
So kill Sidisi with the trigger on the stack as well. He's got some options. Now Farika working its way in the long game is pretty scary, but cross that bridge when we get to it.
Given that Gerard's start looks so bad on the surface, if he has Disdainful Stroke, it's really not that bad.
Now, we saw against Reed, when Reed had mana available to cast the Disdainful Stroke, when he had mana issues in Game 5, Brad refused to cast Sidisi, and he won't cast it here. He'll just pass the turn back. Will not play in a Disdainful Stroke, will not play in a Murderous Cut, and so now here's a Thoughtseize. Maybe this backfires against him. We'll see.
Well, I like the strategy here of trying to get to a spot where you can either cast 2 spells in 1 turn. You can draw a Thoughtseize and take the Disdainful Stroke if you think it's there. Or hopefully Gerard continues to miss land drops and he has to start discarding to hand size.
CDC gets discarded, but a snake token comes into play thanks to Farika.
Now that draw is really bad for Gerard.
Are we perhaps weaving some nightmares here? Yes, we are.
Worst case scenario for Gerard is a productive 3-mana play.
3 cards coming off the top. They will be exiled. None of them look to be creatures to Ashiok. Brad going to play a temple now. And wouldn't it be fitting, a card that has taken Gerard so far in the Open Series in Ashiok, a card that he used to beat Reed Duke in the finals when we were in Worcester.
Going ultimate against mono blue Devotion of all decks.
Yes. He's got an Ashiok of his own. He's fighting back. Caryatid is an option. We're going to go back Nelson's way. Nelson will draw. We know he has a Doomwake Giant over there. He'll start by turning over a couple of cards. Eidolon of Blossoms and a Hornet Queen among them.
Not bad hits.
Not at all. Brad trying to figure out exactly where he wants to go with the snake token.
So this has become a complicated turn. He's picked up Hero's Downfall. He could just Hero's Downfall the Ashiok, but he's really giving up the one window he has to resolve the Doomwake Giant while Gerard's Disdainful Stroke shield is down. It also leaves him with no removal in his hand.
Yeah, he's not going to pass up this opportunity for the 4/6, though. Work his way towards Constellation for Rika, too. You take a look at Farika. 2 Constellation there. 1 from Ashiok. 1 from Doomwake Giant. That's 4. If Ashiok were to bring back Hornet Queen, it would go up to 7, then down to 6, because Ashiok's no longer in play, but getting closer. Ashiok's going to bring Caryatid into play. Now there's a temple, so Fabiano has found a land. Looks like he does have a copy of Negate in his hand, maybe a Silence of Believers as well. Some decent cards over there.
But everything is just choked by his lack of mana.
Yeah.
I mean, these reactive cards, they're very powerful in the matchup, but only when you start to get to a position where you can cast 2 spells in 1 turn, or both players have deployed most of their resources and then you're playing off the top of the deck. It's a very big opportunity cost right now for Gerard to leave up the mana for these counter spells, but every time he taps out, Brad's going to punish him with some big play.
Bunch of mana. Farika. Pass it. Gerard's Farika. 2, 3, 4, 5 devotion, so he's getting close there. Nelson takes a draw. Looks like it may have been a Courser.
And Courser opens up some really nice synergies potentially with the Eidolon hanging out there, the Doomwake Giant already in play.
Brad going to take a moment, figure out exactly how he wants to go about doing things this turn. Ashiok looks like it's taking down, and it is.
This feels like the first order of business to me.
Yeah. Eidolon's going to come into play. Trigger. Roll up the sleeves and draw one. Urborg's the draw. Looks like it might be Courser time now. There that is. Devotion check. A couple of triggers for Constellation as well. Ashiok will be the draw. Top card from Courser. It's a Swamp. Trigger. Up to 21. Top card. Whip of Erebos. Farika is online.
I mean, I guess as a small consolation to Gerard, he's not losing his Caryatids this turn, it appears, because Brad is without a 3rd enchantment, but it's getting real bad.
I suppose no creature in the graveyard here for Nelson to bring back via Farika. At least it doesn't look that way. Doomwake Giant's going to rumble on in. See where it's going to decide to go. Farika can too.
And I mean, with Gerard at 11, there's a big incentive for Brad to try to close this game out as soon as possible. So even though it seems obvious, just shove everything at Ashiok, if Brad can split up his attackers in such a fashion to get some damage through while also threatening this Ashiok, Brad's got to take it.
There goes Ashiok. Some damage is going to come across. Will this be Gerard Fabiano's last untap of the tournament? He's at 5. Nelson at 21 with a great board. Fabiano going to do some math. He does have a Doomweight Giant in hand.
But any inroads Gerard makes on Brad's board, that just fuels Farika. He's at such a deficit mana-wise that he can't really respond with his own. Even if he found a way to get creatures in his own graveyard.
Opulent Palace is the land. Gerard's going to go through the permutations and figure out, what can I do to get out of this situation? Is there anything? He's just going to pass the turn back. Nelson going to untap. He will draw.
I feel like we're on the verge of a concession.
I think so. Trigger, Courser, up to 22. Take a look at the top card now. It's a Satyr Wayfinder. Whip of Erebos will be cast.
Brad just doing this so he has some insurance devotion in play.
Yep, no reason to get sloppy now. Trigger Constellation. Draw a card. There's Manic Influence. Doing a little bit of math, some blockers out there for Fabiano. Does he have to worry about something like Assault Charmer, Hero's Downfall, Murder's Cut? Here's Satyr Wayfinder. Couple of cards coming. Manic Influence among them. Murderous Cut, a Forest, and the Avamai Coast. Going to decide what land to take. It'll be Confluence. Rest will go to the graveyard. We'll see the top card from Courser. Caryatid. Everybody's coming in. Fabio, I'm going to try to figure out, is there any way that I can block to stay alive? Does a removal spell help me? Keep in mind, due to Doomweight Giant's trigger, those are O2s. Well, the 2 toughness Caryatids, I suppose they have -1 power.
I suppose Silence the Believers gives him a little bit of game here.
There that is. Farika's going to bite the dust. Keep in mind, as the Caryatids will die, it doesn't even look like Brad has used Ashiok just yet on his very cluttered board. He will now. Tick it up. Get a couple of cards here from Fabiano in just a moment. Sultai Charm, Whip of Erebos, Temple of Malady. None of those cards can be brought back. Fabiano's turn. Will draw. Is there any way he can pull it out? He cannot. And Brad Nelson, in 3 games, is your Star City Games Players Champion here in 2014. Congratulations to him.